What if you discovered that your company's janitor was actually smarter than you? This is what happened to Richard Blackstone, and it changed his life forever. Before we start the story, don't forget to comment below and let us know which city you're watching from. And at the end, enjoy the story. Richard Blackstone ruled his empire from the 52nd floor of the Blackstone Industries Tower in downtown Manhattan. At 38, he was one of the youngest billionaires in America, having built his tech company from a small startup into a global powerhouse worth $4.2 billion. His corner office was a monument to success, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, a mahogany desk that cost more than most people's cars, and walls lined with awards, patents, and photos of him with world leaders. But success had come at a price. Richard was known throughout the business world as the Ice King, brilliant, ruthless, and completely devoid of empathy. He had no close friends, no family he spoke to regularly, and a trail of failed relationships behind him. Every woman he dated eventually left him for the same reason. He treated people like business assets rather than human beings. That Thursday night in November, Richard was working late again, reviewing quarterly reports for their latest acquisition. It was 11:30 p.m., and the building was empty except for security and the night cleaning crew. Richard preferred working these hours. No interruptions, no small talk, no need to pretend he cared about his employees' personal lives. He was deep in concentration when he heard the sound of a vacuum cleaner in the hallway outside his office. The noise was distracting, breaking his focus on the financial projections that needed to be completed by morning. "Unacceptable," he muttered, getting up from his desk. Richard stormed out of his office and found a middle-aged Latina woman vacuuming the carpet near the elevators. She was wearing the standard gray uniform of the cleaning company, her dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked to be in her mid-40s with kind eyes and hands that showed the wear of hard work. "Excuse me," Richard said sharply, his voice cutting through the hum of the vacuum. The woman looked up, startled, and quickly turned off the machine. "Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I didn't know anyone was still here." "Well, someone is here," Richard said coldly. "And that someone is trying to work. Can't you clean somewhere else?" The woman's cheeks flushed slightly. "I apologize, Mr. Blackstone. I was just following my assigned schedule. I can come back later if you prefer." Richard studied her face, noting the way she maintained eye contact despite his obvious irritation. Most of the cleaning staff avoided looking at him directly. They knew who he was and were intimidated by his reputation. "What's your name?" he asked. "Elena Rodriguez, sir." "Well, Elena Rodriguez, let me explain something to you. I pay more in taxes in one day than you probably make in a year. When I'm working, I need complete silence. Is that too much to ask?" Elena's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but her voice remained steady. "Of course not, sir. I understand completely." "Good. And while we're at it, when you do clean this area, try to be more thorough. I noticed some dust on the baseboards near my office yesterday." "I'll make sure to pay special attention to that area," Elena replied. Richard nodded curtly and turned to walk back to his office. As he did, he heard Elena quietly resume her work, moving her equipment further down the hall. He felt a brief moment of something. Guilt? No, that was ridiculous. He was simply maintaining professional standards. But as he sat back down at his desk, Richard found himself thinking about the woman's reaction. Most people either cowered in his presence or tried to ingratiate themselves to him. Elena had done neither. She'd been respectful, but not subservient, apologetic, but not groveling. There was something almost dignified about her response. Richard shook his head and forced himself to focus on the spreadsheets in front of him. He didn't have time to psychoanalyze the cleaning staff. Over the next few weeks, Richard found himself staying late more often, ostensibly to catch up on work, but partly because he had become curious about the night cleaning crew. He rarely saw them. They were like ghosts who materialized after hours to maintain the pristine environment he demanded. But occasionally, he would encounter Elena in the hallway or the break room. She was always polite, always professional, but there was something different about her. While the other cleaning staff seemed tired and worn down by their work, Elena moved with a certain grace, a quiet confidence that seemed out of place. One evening, Richard was in the break room getting coffee when Elena entered to empty the trash. She was humming softly to herself, something classical that Richard vaguely recognized. Vivaldi, he found himself asking. Elena looked surprised that he had spoken to her. Yes, sir. The Four Seasons, Spring Movement, Richard raised an eyebrow. It wasn't unusual for cleaning staff to know popular music, but classical composers? You're familiar with Vivaldi? I enjoy classical music, Elena said simply, continuing with her work. Most people your age prefer different music. Elena paused in her work and looked at him directly. What age do you think I am, Mr. Blackstone? The question caught Richard off guard. He studied her face more carefully. Her skin was weathered from work, but her eyes were sharp and intelligent. I don't know. 50-something. I'm 45, Elena said, but I suppose hard work ages a person. There was no bitterness in her voice, just a statement of fact. Richard felt oddly defensive. I didn't mean to imply, it's fine, sir. People see what they expect to see. She finished emptying the trash and started to leave, but Richard found himself calling after her. What did you do before this? Elena turned back to him, and for a moment he saw something flicker across her face. Pain, regret. I was a teacher, she said quietly. What subject? Literature. Medieval literature, primarily. Richard was intrigued despite himself. High school? Elena hesitated. College level. She left without saying anything more, leaving Richard standing alone in the break room with his coffee growing cold. A college literature professor working as a janitor? That didn't make sense. What could have happened to cause such a dramatic career change? Richard's curiosity about Elena grew stronger over the following days. He found himself making excuses to work late, hoping to run into her again. When he did see her, he tried to engage her in conversation, but she remained politely distant, answering his questions without volunteering additional information. It was during one of these late-night encounters that Richard noticed something that would change everything. Elena was cleaning the conference room adjacent to Richard's office when he walked by. The room had a large whiteboard that the development team had been using for a complex algorithm project earlier that day. The board was covered with equations and code snippets that represented months of work by some of the company's best engineers. As Richard glanced through the glass wall, he saw Elena standing in front of the whiteboard, not cleaning it, but studying it intently. She was holding a marker in her hand, and as Richard watched, she made several small corrections to the code, her movements quick and confident. Richard's eyes widened. The algorithm on that board represented cutting-edge artificial intelligence research that only a handful of people in the world could understand, let alone improve. His development team had been stuck on those particular equations for weeks. He pushed open the conference room door. What are you doing? Elena spun around, the marker falling from her hand, her face flushed with embarrassment and what looked like fear. I'm sorry, Mr. Blackstone. I was just cleaning the board. I didn't mean to. You didn't mean to what? Solve problems that my best engineers couldn't solve? Elena's eyes darted to the whiteboard and back to Richard. I don't know what you mean. Richard walked to the board and studied the corrections Elena had made. They were elegant, sophisticated, and absolutely correct. These weren't random scribbles or lucky guesses. These were the work of someone with advanced knowledge of computer science and mathematics. Elena, Richard said slowly. Who are you really? Elena's hands trembled as she reached for her cleaning supplies. I'm nobody, sir, just the cleaning lady. Cleaning ladies don't typically understand machine learning algorithms, Richard said, his voice gentler now. Elena, please, talk to me. For a long moment, Elena stood frozen, her internal struggle visible on her face. Finally, her shoulders sagged in defeat. I was Dr. Elena Rodriguez, she said quietly, professor of computer science and medieval literature at Harvard University. Richard felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. What? I had dual doctorates, computer science from MIT, literature from Harvard. I was a tenured professor for 15 years. Richard stared at her, his mind racing. A Harvard professor, working as a janitor in his building. The implications were staggering. What happened? He asked, Elena's eyes filled with tears. Everything. I lost everything. Elena looked around the conference room as if seeing it for the first time. The whiteboard with its complex equations, the expensive furniture, the view of the city lights, all reminders of a world she had once belonged to. "You want to know what happened?" she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I made the mistake of trusting the wrong person." Richard pulled out a chair and gestured for Elena to sit. After a moment's hesitation, she did, her cleaning supplies forgotten. "I was working on a revolutionary AI project," Elena began, natural language processing combined with historical analysis. The goal was to create an AI that could interpret ancient texts, translate dead languages, maybe even fill in gaps in historical records. Richard leaned forward, intrigued. "That sounds groundbreaking." "It was. 5 years of my life went into that research, but I wasn't working alone. I had a research partner, Dr. James Mitchell, another professor in the computer science department. We were involved personally as well as professionally." Elena's hands clenched in her lap. "James convinced me to let him handle the patent applications, the business side of things. I trusted him completely. We were planning to get married after the project was completed. What went wrong? James filed all the patents under his name only. When the technology was ready, he sold it to a major tech company for $50 million. Overnight, he went from being a struggling academic to being wealthy and famous." Richard felt a cold anger building in his chest. "And you got nothing." "Worse than nothing. When I tried to prove that the work was partly mine, James claimed that I'd been an assistant on his project, not a partner. He had documentation to support his claim. Documents I had signed thinking they were standard research agreements." Elena's voice grew bitter. "The university believed him. After all, he was the one with the money and the contracts. They said I was a disgruntled ex-girlfriend trying to profit from his success. But surely you had evidence. I had my research notes, my code, everything. But James was smart. He had gradual documentation showing the evolution of his ideas. My contributions were buried in technical details that only another expert could understand. And who was going to believe a woman scorned over a newly famous innovator?" Richard was beginning to understand the scope of the betrayal. "What happened to your position at Harvard?" "The scandal followed me everywhere. James made sure of that. He spread rumors about my mental stability, my competence, my ethics. Other universities wouldn't touch me. I couldn't get research grants. I couldn't even get a job teaching high school." Elena wiped away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. "The legal battle to try to prove my case cost me everything I had. Lawyers, expert witnesses, court fees. I spent my entire savings and then some. When I finally gave up, I was broke and unemployable." "Your family? Friends?" "My parents died when I was young. I have a sister, but she lives in Mexico and has her own family to support. As for friends," Elena laughed bitterly. "You'd be surprised how quickly academic colleagues distance themselves when you become controversial. They were afraid association with me would hurt their own careers." Richard sat in stunned silence. The woman he had been treating as just a cleaning lady was actually one of the most accomplished people he had ever met. She had achieved things that most people could only dream of, only to have it all stolen from her by someone she loved and trusted. "How long have you been working as a janitor?" 3 years. After the money ran out, I had no choice. I was facing eviction, and this was the only job I could get without references from my academic career. The cleaning company doesn't do extensive background checks, and they needed someone for the night shift." "But Elena, your skills, your knowledge, surely there's something else you could do." Elena shook her head sadly. "Try explaining a 10-year gap in your resume when the last thing on your CV is being involved in a messy academic scandal. Try getting an interview when your former colleague, now a famous tech entrepreneur, has made sure that your reputation is destroyed. What about starting over, using a different name?" "I tried, but academic credentials are hard to fake, and the tech world is smaller than you think. James's influence reaches everywhere. He's on the boards of major companies. He speaks at conferences. He's quoted in the media. His version of our story is the official version." Richard felt a mix of emotions he couldn't fully identify. Anger at the injustice Elena had suffered, admiration for her resilience, and shame at how he had treated her, not knowing her story. "Elena, I am so sorry for what happened to you and for how I've treated you." Elena looked at him with surprise. "You didn't know." "That's no excuse. I treated you like you were less than human because of your job. I judged you based on your uniform instead of your character." "Most people do. It's easier to see what someone does rather than who they are." Richard stood up and began pacing the conference room. "This is unacceptable. You're wasting your talents pushing a vacuum cleaner around when you should be leading research teams, teaching students, changing the world." "Richard," Elena said softly, using his first name for the first time, "that world doesn't want me anymore. Then we'll make a new world for you." Elena stared at Richard as if he had lost his mind. "What are you talking about?" Richard's business instincts were kicking in. He saw an opportunity, but more than that, he saw a chance to right a terrible wrong. "Elena, you corrected equations in 5 minutes that my development team has been struggling with for weeks. You have knowledge and skills that my company desperately needs. Richard, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I want to offer you a job, a real job, head of our AI research division." Elena laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You want to hire a janitor to run your research department? What would your board of directors say? What would your employees think?" "I want to hire Dr. Elena Rodriguez, former Harvard professor and brilliant computer scientist. What you've been doing to pay the bills doesn't define who you are." Elena shook her head. "It's been 3 years since I've done serious research. The field moves so fast, I'm probably outdated already." "Are you kidding me? You just improved code that represents the cutting edge of AI development. If you're outdated, then the rest of us are living in the Stone Age." Elena stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. "Even if I could do the work, and that's a big if, how do you think it would look? The CEO suddenly promoting the cleaning lady to a top executive position? People would assume things." "What kind of things?" Elena turned to face him, her cheeks flushed. "They'd assume I was sleeping with you to get the job. They'd assume you were having some kind of midlife crisis. They'd assume anything except that I might actually be qualified." Richard hadn't considered that angle, but he realized Elena was right. The optics would be terrible. "So we'll handle it carefully. We'll make sure everyone understands your qualifications." "Richard, you don't understand. James made sure that my name is associated with scandal in academic circles. The moment you announce that you've hired Elena Rodriguez, someone will remember the controversy and bring it up. Then let them. We'll tell the truth." "The truth according to whom?" "James has had 3 years to solidify his version of events. He's respected, successful, and credible. I'm a janitor with a grudge." Richard felt his frustration building. Here was this incredibly talented woman, and she was being held back by the lies of a man who had already stolen so much from her. "Elena, what if I told you I don't care about any of that? What if I told you that I believe your version of the story and I want to give you a chance to prove yourself again? I'd ask you why. You barely know me. Why would you risk your company's reputation on someone like me?" It was a fair question, and Richard found himself struggling to answer it. Why was he willing to take this risk? Was it guilt over how he had treated her? Admiration for her resilience? Or was it something deeper? "Because," he said slowly, "in the past few weeks, you've shown me more intelligence, dignity, and grace than anyone in my life has shown me in years. Because you've been dealt the worst hand imaginable, and you've faced it without becoming bitter or giving up. Because you deserve a second chance, and I have the power to give it to you." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "Richard, I appreciate what you're saying, I really do. But I can't let you do this. It would destroy your credibility and probably accomplish nothing except ruining your career along with mine. What if we started small?" "What do you mean?" "What if you didn't officially join the company right away? What if I hired you as a consultant working from home initially? You could review our AI projects, make recommendations, help solve problems. No one would need to know who you are until you're ready." Elena considered this. "And then what?" "Then When you've proven your value, which I'm confident you will, we reveal your background and credentials. We show the world what you're capable of. We force them to judge you based on your work, not your history. That could take months, maybe years. I'm patient. Elena walked back to the whiteboard and stared at the equations she had corrected. I'd forgotten what it felt like, she said quietly. What? To use my mind for something meaningful, to solve complex problems, to feel like I was making a contribution to human knowledge. She turned back to Richard. These past 3 years, I've felt like I was slowly disappearing, like the person I used to be was fading away. That person is still there, Elena. She's just been buried under circumstances beyond her control. Elena was quiet for a long time, her internal struggle visible on her face. Finally, she looked at Richard with an expression of cautious hope. If I agreed to this, and I'm not saying I am, what would be the terms? Richard felt a surge of excitement. Whatever you want. Name your salary, your working conditions, your timeline. This is about giving you back your life, not about exploiting your talents. I'd need complete creative control over any projects I work on. I won't have someone else taking credit for my work ever again. Absolutely. And I'd need your guarantee that if this doesn't work out, you won't retaliate against me. I can't afford to lose this janitorial job. It's the only income I have. Elena, if this doesn't work out, it will be because I failed you, not because you failed me. But you have my word. Your current position is secure, regardless of what happens. Elena nodded slowly. I need time to think about it. Of course. Take all the time you need. As Elena gathered her cleaning supplies and prepared to leave, Richard felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Excitement about the future. Not excitement about profits or market dominance, but excitement about the possibility of helping someone reclaim their life. Elena, he called as she reached the door. Yes? For what it's worth, I think James Mitchell is an idiot. Elena smiled, the first genuine smile Richard had ever seen from her. Thank you, Richard. That means more than you know. The next few days were strange for Richard. He found himself looking forward to the evening hours when Elena would arrive for her cleaning shift. But their relationship had fundamentally changed. Instead of the dismissive CEO and the invisible janitor, they were now, what? Colleagues? Friends? Something more? Elena had asked for a week to consider his offer, and Richard respected her need for time. But he could see the internal battle playing out across her face every time they encountered each other. Hope warring with fear, ambition fighting against the safety of low expectations. On Tuesday evening, Richard was working late again when Elena knocked softly on his office door. Come in, he called. Elena entered, but instead of her usual cleaning uniform, she was carrying a folder and wearing simple but professional clothes, a navy blazer and slacks that were obviously inexpensive but clean and well-fitted. I've been thinking about your offer, she said, settling into the chair across from his desk. And I want to show you something first. Elena opened the folder and pulled out several sheets of paper covered with handwritten notes and diagrams. I've been working on some ideas related to your AI project. Richard took the papers and began reading. What he saw made his breath catch. Elena had not only solved the problems his team had been working on, but she had identified several potential improvements that could revolutionize their entire approach. Elena, this is incredible. How long did this take you? I've been working on it during my breaks and after my shift ends. Maybe 20 hours total. Richard stared at her. 20 hours of work by Elena had accomplished more than his entire development team had in 6 months. I keep thinking about the natural language processing component, Elena continued, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. You're approaching it from a purely technical standpoint, but language is cultural, contextual, emotional. If you want AI to truly understand human communication, you need to incorporate historical and literary analysis. That's exactly the kind of interdisciplinary thinking we need, Richard said. Elena, this proves what I already knew. You're exactly what this company needs. Elena smiled, and Richard noticed how much younger she looked when she was talking about her work. The weariness that usually surrounded her like a cloak had disappeared, replaced by an energy and passion that was magnetic. "I have conditions," she said. "Name them." "First, I want to start immediately, but as a consultant working from home, as you suggested, I need to keep my current job until I'm confident this arrangement will work long term." "Agreed." "Second, I want complete control over the research methodology and team selection for any projects I lead." "Of course." "Third, I want a clause in my contract that protects my intellectual property rights. Everything I create remains co-owned by me and the company." Richard nodded. After what Elena had been through, this request was entirely reasonable. "And fourth," Elena's voice grew softer, "I want your promise that you'll be honest with me. If this isn't working, if I'm not meeting expectations, if the board objects to my involvement, I want to know immediately. I can't go through another situation where I'm kept in the dark about my own fate." "Elena, you have my word. Complete transparency. Always." Elena reached across the desk and shook Richard's hand. "Then I accept your offer." Richard felt a warmth spread through his chest that had nothing to do with business success. "Welcome to the team, Dr. Rodriguez." Over the next month, Richard and Elena developed a routine that worked around her janitorial schedule. During the day, Elena would work from her small studio apartment, diving deep into the company's AI research. In the evenings, she would come to the office for her cleaning job, but she and Richard would spend time discussing her findings and planning the next steps. The arrangement was unconventional, but it was working brilliantly. Elena's insights were revolutionizing their approach to artificial intelligence. She had identified flaws in their algorithms that had been causing performance issues, suggested new training methodologies that improved accuracy by 40%, and proposed entirely new applications that could open up billion-dollar markets. Richard found himself looking forward to their evening sessions more than any other part of his day. Elena's enthusiasm for the work was infectious, and her unique perspective challenged him to think about problems in ways he never had before. But it wasn't just her professional insights that captivated him. As Elena regained confidence in her abilities, her personality began to shine through. She was funny, insightful, and incredibly well-read. Their conversations ranged from cutting-edge technology to medieval poetry, from business strategy to philosophical debates about the nature of intelligence. "You know," Elena said one evening as they reviewed her latest research, "I had forgotten how much I love this work." "You mean AI research?" "I mean discovery. The thrill of solving a puzzle that no one has solved before. The satisfaction of creating something that could genuinely help people." Elena looked up from her notes. "These past 3 years, I felt like I was just existing, going through the motions. But working on these problems again, I feel like myself for the first time since everything fell apart." Richard studied her face in the soft light of his office. "You're glowing," he said without thinking. Elena blushed. "What?" "You're literally glowing. When you talk about the research, your whole face lights up. It's beautiful." The moment the words left his mouth, Richard realized he had crossed a line. This was supposed to be a professional relationship. Elena was vulnerable, grateful for his help, and probably seeing him as a savior rather than as a man. It would be completely inappropriate for him to develop romantic feelings for her. But as he looked into Elena's eyes, he realized it was too late for those concerns. He was already falling for her. Elena seemed to sense the shift in the atmosphere. "Richard, I should probably get back to my cleaning rounds." "Of course, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." Elena gathered her papers, but she paused at the door. "You didn't make me uncomfortable," she said quietly. "That's what scares me." After she left, Richard sat alone in his office, trying to process what was happening to him. He had been with many women over the years. Models, socialites, successful businesswomen. But he had never felt this kind of connection with anyone. Elena challenged him intellectually, inspired him professionally, and made him want to be a better person. But the situation was complicated. Elena was still technically his employee, even if only as a consultant. She was also in a vulnerable position, financially dependent on his goodwill. Any romantic relationship between them would be fraught with power imbalances and ethical concerns. Still, Richard couldn't deny what he was feeling. For the first time in his life, he was in love. Really, truly in love. 6 weeks into their secret partnership, Elena's work had advanced to the point where Richard knew they needed to bring other team members into the project. Elena's algorithms were ready for implementation, but that would require the full development team's involvement. "Are you ready for this?" Richard asked as they prepared for Elena's first official meeting with the AI development team. Elena smoothed her blazer nervously. She had bought a few professional outfits with her consulting income, and while they were still modest, they were a vast improvement over her cleaning uniform. "I think so. I've prepared presentations for each of the major components. I just hope they're willing to listen to an outsider's ideas." "Elena, you're not an outsider. You're the most qualified person in this room, including me." The development team gathered in the conference room, the same room where Richard had first discovered Elena's true identity. There were 8 engineers and computer scientists, all with impressive credentials from top universities and tech companies. "Team," Richard began, "I want you to meet our new lead AI consultant, Dr. Elena Rodriguez. Elena has been working on some revolutionary approaches to our natural language processing challenges, and I think you'll find her insights invaluable." Richard watched the team's faces as Elena began her presentation. At first, there was polite but skeptical attention. Who was this woman they'd never heard of, and why was the CEO suddenly bringing in an outside consultant? But as Elena delved into her research, explaining her methodology and demonstrating her results, the atmosphere in the room changed. The engineers began leaning forward, asking technical questions, requesting clarification on specific algorithms. "Dr. Rodriguez," said Mark Chen, the team's lead developer, "these performance improvements you're showing, have you actually implemented these changes?" "I've tested them on sample datasets," Elena replied. "The results are consistent across multiple trials." "This is incredible," said Sarah Kim, a machine learning specialist. "How did you identify these optimization opportunities? We've been looking at this code for months." Elena smiled. "Sometimes an outside perspective can see patterns that are invisible to people who are too close to the problem." The meeting ran 2 hours longer than scheduled. By the end, the development team was energized and excited about implementing Elena's innovations. As people filed out of the conference room, Richard heard them discussing technical details and making plans for the next phases of development. Mark Chen approached Elena as she was packing up her materials. "Dr. Rodriguez, I have to ask, where did you come from? I mean, your work is obviously top tier, but I've never heard your name in AI research circles." Elena glanced at Richard, who nodded encouragingly. They had discussed how to handle this question. "I've been out of academia for a few years," Elena said carefully. "Personal circumstances led me to take a break from research." "Well, wherever you've been, we're lucky to have you now," Mark said. "I haven't been this excited about a project in years." After everyone left, Richard and Elena found themselves alone in the conference room again. "That went well," Richard said. "Better than I expected," Elena agreed. "Your team is very talented. It's going to be a pleasure working with them." "Elena, there's something I need to tell you." Elena looked at him with concern. "What is it?" "The success of today's meeting means we're going to have to make your role official soon. The team will want to collaborate with you directly, bring you into daily development processes. We can't keep pretending you're just a consultant working from home." Elena nodded slowly. "I know. I've been thinking about that too." "Which means we'll need to announce your hire publicly. HR will need your full background. We'll probably issue a press release about bringing you on board. Your name will be out there again." Elena was quiet for a moment. "And when that happens, James will find out where I am." "Probably? Are you ready for that?" Elena walked to the window and looked out at the city. "I don't know if anyone can ever be ready to face their demons, but I think I'm stronger now than I was 3 years ago, and I have something I didn't have then." "What's that?" Elena turned back to Richard. "I have you in my corner." The simple statement hit Richard with unexpected force. Elena trusted him. Despite everything she had been through, despite all the reasons she had to be cautious about trusting anyone, especially a man in a position of power over her, she trusted him. "Elena," Richard said, moving closer to her, "there's something else I need to tell you." "What?" "I'm falling in love with you." Elena's eyes widened. "Richard, I know the timing is terrible. I know this complicates everything. I know you might not feel the same way. But I couldn't keep pretending it wasn't happening." Elena stared at him for a long moment. "You don't even really know me. I know you better than I've ever known anyone. I know you're brilliant, resilient, and kind. I know you've been through hell and come out stronger. I know you light up when you talk about your work. You hum Vivaldi when you think no one is listening, and you never give up even when the odds are stacked against you." Tears formed in Elena's eyes. "Richard, I care about you too, more than I should, but this is dangerous territory." "Why?" "Because I'm still vulnerable. I'm still dependent on your goodwill. How do I know that my feelings for you are real and not just gratitude for the second chance you've given me? How do I know that my feelings for you aren't just guilt over how I treated you initially, or admiration for your accomplishments?" Elena smiled through her tears. "I guess we don't know. But Richard, if we're going to explore this, we need to do it right. No rushing, no power games, no secrets. What do you suggest?" "Let's take this one step at a time. First, we make my role at the company official. We deal with whatever backlash comes from that. We establish me as a respected member of the team based on my own merits. And then? Then we see if what we feel for each other survives in the light of day." Richard nodded. "That's smart. That's professional. That's exactly what we should do." "But," Richard smiled, "but I'm already counting the days until I can kiss you without either of us wondering if it's appropriate." Elena laughed, and the sound filled Richard's heart with warmth. "You're going to be trouble, aren't you?" "Probably. Is that okay?" "More than okay," Elena said. "I think I've been waiting my whole life for the right kind of trouble." The announcement of Elena's hire as director of AI research at Blackstone Industries created exactly the kind of media attention Richard had feared. The press release, which highlighted Elena's impressive credentials and groundbreaking research, was picked up by major tech publications and business journals. Within 24 hours, Richard's phone was ringing constantly. Journalists wanted to know why he had hired an unknown researcher for such a crucial position. Investors were concerned about the company's direction, and, as Elena had predicted, someone had done their homework. "Mr. Blackstone, this is Jennifer Walsh from TechCrunch," came the call Richard had been dreading. "I'm working on a story about your new hire, Dr. Elena Rodriguez. I've discovered some interesting information about her background that I'd like to discuss with you." Richard had prepared for this moment. "What kind of information?" "Well, it seems, Doctor, Rodriguez was involved in a significant intellectual property dispute several years ago with Dr. James Mitchell, who is now CEO of Neural Dynamics Corporation. There were allegations that she tried to claim credit for his revolutionary AI work. I was wondering if you were aware of this when you hired her." "I'm fully aware of Dr. Rodriguez's background," Richard said calmly. "I'm also confident in her integrity and capabilities." "But surely you must have concerns about hiring someone with such a controversial past, especially for such a high-level position." "Ms. Walsh, I judge my employees based on their work, not on unsubstantiated allegations from years ago. Dr. Rodriguez has already made significant contributions to our research efforts." "I see. Well, I've reached out to Dr. Mitchell for comment. He had some very interesting things to say about your new hire." Richard's jaw clenched. "I'm sure he did." The article came out the next morning, and it was everything Elena had feared. The headline read, "Blackstone Industries hires controversial ex-academic with history of IP disputes." The piece rehashed all the allegations from Elena's past, quoted James Mitchell extensively, and raised questions about Richard's judgment as a CEO. The fact that a company of Blackstone's caliber would hire someone with such a checkered history raises serious questions about their due diligence process. Mitchell was quoted as saying. Elena Rodriguez has a pattern of trying to claim credit for other people's work. I hope Richard Blackstone realizes what he's gotten himself into. Richard found Elena in her new office, a real office, with windows and a door and everything she needed to do her work properly. She was staring at her computer screen, which displayed the TechCrunch article. I'm sorry, Richard said, closing the door behind him. Elena looked up at him with tired eyes. You have nothing to apologize for. I knew this would happen. How are you holding up? I've been better, but I've also been worse. Elena gestured at her office, her computer, the whiteboard covered with equations. 3 months ago, I was emptying trash cans. Today, I have a team of brilliant engineers implementing my research. I'm not going to let James Mitchell's lies take that away from me again. Richard was amazed by her resilience. The board is meeting this afternoon. There's going to be pressure to reconsider your position. And what will you tell them? I'll tell them that you're the most valuable hire this company has made in years. I'll show them your work, your results, your contributions. I'll make them understand that James Mitchell is a liar and a thief. Elena stood up and walked around her desk to stand in front of Richard. Thank you for believing in me, for defending me, for giving me this chance. Elena, you don't need to thank me. You've earned everything you have here. Have I? Or am I here because the CEO has feelings for me? The question hit Richard like a physical blow. Is that what you think? I don't know what to think anymore. The article, the allegations, the questions about your judgment. It all comes back to the same thing. People think you hired me for personal reasons, not professional ones. Does it matter what people think if we know the truth? Elena considered this. It matters because it undermines my credibility. Every success I have here will be attributed to our personal relationship rather than my abilities. So what do you want to do? Elena took a deep breath. I want to fight. I want to prove them all wrong. I want to create something so revolutionary, so undeniably brilliant that even James Mitchell will have to acknowledge my capabilities. Richard smiled. What did you have in mind? Elena walked back to her whiteboard where she had been working on something new. I've been thinking about the natural language processing project. What if we could create an AI that doesn't just understand language, but understands context, emotion, cultural nuance? An AI that could read a Shakespeare sonnet and understand not just the words, but the passion behind them. That sounds like science fiction. So did everything else that's now part of our daily lives. Richard, I think I know how to do this, but it's going to require resources, time, and a team that trusts my vision. You have all of that. Even if the board votes to fire me this afternoon, Richard looked into Elena's eyes, seeing the hope and fear battling there. Elena, I need you to know something. Even if the board votes against you, even if we face more negative publicity, even if this whole thing blows up in our faces, I will never regret hiring you. You've changed this company and you've changed me. Elena's eyes filled with tears. Richard, and when this is all over, when you've proven yourself beyond any doubt and silenced all your critics, I'm going to ask you on a proper date. Elena laughed through her tears. Just one date? Well, we'll see how the first one goes. Chapter 10. The Vindication. The board meeting that afternoon was one of the most difficult of Richard's career. 7 of the 9 board members expressed concerns about Elena's hire, citing the negative publicity and potential damage to the company's reputation. Richard, we understand your desire to bring in fresh talent, said Margaret Chen, the board's chairwoman, but this situation is becoming a distraction. Our stock price dropped 3% this morning alone. The stock price is reacting to media speculation, not to actual performance issues, Richard replied. Dr. Rodriguez's work is already showing measurable results. But the optics are terrible, argued board member David Sullivan. Hiring someone with such a controversial background, especially when there are allegations of romantic involvement. There are no romantic involvements affecting business decisions, Richard said firmly. Dr. Rodriguez was hired based solely on her qualifications and capabilities. Then why not hire one of the dozens of other qualified AI researchers who don't come with this baggage? Asked another board member. Richard had prepared for this question. Because none of those other researchers have Elena's unique combination of technical expertise and interdisciplinary knowledge. None of them have her innovative approach to natural language processing. None of them have already delivered the kind of breakthrough results she has. The debate continued for 2 hours. In the end, the board agreed to give Elena 6 months to prove her value to the company. If she could deliver on her promises and the negative publicity died down, she could stay. If not, she would have to go. Richard walked back to Elena's office with mixed feelings. He had bought her time, but the pressure was enormous. 6 months to silence her critics and validate his faith in her. "How did it go?" Elena asked as soon as he entered her office. "You have 6 months." Elena nodded calmly. "That's more than enough time." "Elena, you understand the pressure you're under? If this doesn't work out, it will work out," Elena said with quiet confidence. "Richard, I've been thinking about this all afternoon. I know exactly what I need to do." Over the next 6 months, Elena threw herself into her work with an intensity that amazed everyone around her. She arrived early, stayed late, and approached every challenge with the focused determination of someone who had everything to prove. The natural language processing project became her masterpiece. Working with the development team, Elena created an AI system that could not only understand language, but interpret emotion, cultural context, and artistic intent. The system could read poetry and explain the metaphors, analyze historical documents and identify the political subtleties, even generate creative writing that captured specific emotional tones. The breakthrough came when Elena's AI successfully analyzed and explained the symbolic meaning in a previously untranslatable ancient Mayan text. The system didn't just translate the words, it understood the cultural and religious significance of the symbols, providing insights that had eluded human scholars for decades. The achievement made international news. Anthropologists, linguists, and historians hailed it as a revolutionary breakthrough that could unlock thousands of years of human history. Tech industry leaders praised the innovation as a quantum leap in artificial intelligence development. James Mitchell's response was swift and predictable. In interviews, he claimed that Elena's work was based on research he had pioneered years earlier. He threatened legal action and demanded access to Blackstone's AI code to verify that his intellectual property hadn't been stolen. But this time, Elena was ready for him. "Let him come," she told Richard when Mitchell's lawyers delivered their cease and desist letter. "I have something he doesn't." "What's that?" "The truth. And this time, I have the documentation to prove it." Elena had learned from her previous experience. Every line of code, every algorithm, every breakthrough had been meticulously documented and time-stamped. She had video recordings of her work sessions, detailed research logs, and independent verification of her methodology. When Mitchell's legal team arrived for their threatened examination of Elena's work, they found themselves facing not a vulnerable woman with questionable claims, but a prepared professional with ironclad evidence of her innovations. The confrontation came to a head when Mitchell himself arrived at Blackstone Industries, demanding a meeting with Richard and Elena. "James," Elena said calmly when he entered the conference room, "it's been a long time." Mitchell looked older than his years, his face showing the stress of defending his lies for so long. "Elena, still playing the victim, I see." "Actually, I'm not playing anything anymore. I'm simply telling the truth." "Your truth, which seems to change depending on your audience." Richard had heard enough. "Dr. Mitchell, you've made some serious allegations about our employees' work. We're prepared to defend against those allegations." "I created the foundational research that your so-called breakthrough is based on," Mitchell said. "Elena was my research assistant at the time. She's trying to profit from my innovations." Elena smiled and pulled out a tablet. "James, would you like to see the code for the natural language processing algorithm you claim to have created?" "I don't need to see stolen code." "Oh, this isn't stolen. This is your code from the original project." Elena displayed lines of code on the tablet. "Notice anything interesting about it?" Mitchell glanced at the screen and his face went pale. That's right, Elena continued. Your revolutionary algorithm is actually quite primitive. It uses basic pattern matching and keyword recognition. No cultural analysis, no emotional processing, no contextual understanding. It couldn't analyze a Dr. Seuss book, let alone ancient Mayan texts. Elena pulled up another screen. This is the code for our current system. As you can see, it's entirely different, more sophisticated, more elegant, more effective, because it was designed by someone who actually understands both computer science and human communication. Mitchell stood up abruptly. This proves nothing. You could have developed this from my foundational work. Actually, it proves everything, Elena said, because it shows that your so-called breakthrough was never really a breakthrough at all. It was adequate for basic translation tasks, but it was never capable of the kind of cultural analysis you claimed it could do. Richard watched as the truth dawned on Mitchell's face. He had built his career on a lie, and now that lie was being exposed. Furthermore, Elena continued, I have evidence that the core algorithms you claimed as your own were actually developed by our original research team, including me. I have time-stamped files, email records, and witness statements that prove my contributions. Mitchell's lawyers began whispering urgently in his ear. The meeting ended quickly after that, with Mitchell's team retreating to consider their options. 2 weeks later, Mitchell dropped all legal threats and issued a public statement acknowledging Elena's contributions to their original research. He didn't admit to theft, but the implication was clear to anyone paying attention. 1 year after Elena's hire was announced, Blackstone Industries was named Tech Company of the Year by Global Business Magazine. Elena's AI innovations had generated over $200 million in new revenue and established the company as a leader in natural language processing technology. Elena herself had been featured on the cover of Scientific American and given the Innovation Award by the American Association for Artificial Intelligence. Universities were competing to offer her visiting professorships, and tech companies were trying to recruit her with offers that would have made her wealthy in her own right. But Elena stayed at Blackstone Industries, continuing to push the boundaries of what AI could accomplish. Any regrets? Richard asked one evening as they worked late in Elena's office, now expanded to accommodate her growing team. About staying here instead of taking one of those other offers? About any of it. The public scrutiny, the legal battles, the stress of proving yourself all over again. Elena looked around her office, at the whiteboards covered with equations, the awards on the walls, the photos of her team celebrating their latest breakthrough. Not a single regret. Well, except maybe one. What's that? Elena smiled and walked over to where Richard was sitting. I regret that it took us so long to do this. She leaned down and kissed him, a gentle, sweet kiss that spoke of patience rewarded and promises kept. Elena Rodriguez, Richard said when they broke apart. Would you like to have dinner with me? Somewhere nice where we can talk about things that have nothing to do with algorithms or business meetings. Are you asking me on a date, Richard Blackstone? I'm asking you on the first of many dates if you'll have me. Elena pretended to consider this. Well, I suppose I could fit you into my schedule, but I should warn you, I'm a very successful, very busy executive now. I don't have time for games. Richard laughed. Good thing I'm not playing games, I'm playing for keeps. Is that so? Dr. Elena Rodriguez, I love your brilliant mind, your resilient spirit, and your generous heart. I love the way you hum while you work, and the way you light up when you solve a complex problem. I love that you see possibilities where others see obstacles. And I love that you've taught me what it means to value people for who they are, not what they can do for me. Elena's eyes filled with tears. Richard Blackstone, I love your stubborn determination to do the right thing, even when it's difficult. I love that you took a chance on me when no one else would. I love that you see strength where others see weakness. And I love that you've given me back not just my career, but my belief in myself. So, is that a yes to dinner? That's a yes to everything, Elena said, and kissed him again. 6 months later, they were married in a small ceremony attended by Elena's research team, Richard's employees, and a handful of close friends. Elena wore a simple white dress, Richard wore a navy suit, and both of them wore expressions of complete happiness. During the reception, Mark Chen, Elena's lead developer, raised a toast to Richard and Elena, who proved that sometimes the most valuable things in life are found in the most unexpected places. As Richard looked around the room at the faces of people who had become not just colleagues but friends, he realized that Elena had given him more than love. She had given him a real life, filled with real relationships and real purpose. "What are you thinking about?" Elena asked, slipping her hand into his. "I'm thinking about how lucky I am. A year ago, I thought success meant having more money than everyone else and being feared by my competitors. And now? Now I know that success means being married to the smartest, strongest, most amazing woman in the world and spending every day working alongside her to create something meaningful." Elena squeezed his hand. "Well, when you put it that way, I suppose we're both pretty successful." "The most successful people I know," Richard agreed, and meant every word. And as they danced together surrounded by the people who had become their chosen family, both Elena and Richard knew that sometimes the best discoveries aren't made in laboratories or boardrooms, but in the simple recognition of worth and love in unexpected places. Sometimes the person emptying your trash can is actually the person who will fill your life with meaning. Sometimes the employee you overlook is the one who will transform everything you thought you knew about success, love, and what it means to truly live. What do you think? Did Richard learn the real meaning of success? Would you have been brave enough to give Elena a second chance? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this story inspired you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. Don't forget to click on the videos at the end of the screen for more heartwarming stories about love, redemption, and second chances.